Hi, Dr. Nee. I just wanted to update you on my progress for this week and the language learning I've been doing as part of this Introduction to Multilingualism course. And again, I just really want to thank you for letting me experiment with this. I feel like this is so much more valuable than reading about the theory of multilingualism, although it's been really interesting of reading, particularly the article that I had to read this past week with all like the different bilingual memory different approaches to that. And it was really interesting as I was considering my own process. And it just made the second forum post so much more relevant when I'm in the midst of trying to learn some other languages in the process. And I took your advice of just spending some more time reviewing. So I typed up some of the major words and phrases that I was reviewing, but I'd really prefer in this video to focus on more my goals because since it was a review, I know that I'm pronouncing the words correctly and have just really been practicing that and not trying to learn a whole bunch of new words. So I just wanted to show you as evidence of some of the words that I've really been practicing. And you can see English, and I highlighted it just to make it a little bit easier for both of us. And then French, Dutch, German, and Spanish. So those are some of the phrases and words that I've been working on. But I really just wanted to spend some time focusing on the goals so that I can make sure we're kind of on the same page. And if you'd like me to record another video of pronouncing the words, I'm happy to do that. But one of the questions that you had asked in your follow-up for my last video was what my learning goals are and what I want to achieve at the end of week 8. And really what I would love to do, ideally, I'd be comfortable having basic conversation with someone in each of these languages. So whether that be my friend Hendrik, who speaks German, Dutch, and French, or whether it be my grandmother in Spanish or the Spanish teacher and French teacher with whom I work, those are all viable options. And just, again, basic conversations. Hi, how are you? Um, like, what do you do for work? Do you enjoy it? Where's the bathroom? Some of the phrases that I've been learning. And I do, when I move forward in these next few weeks, I think I'm going to focus more on the travel aspect because that's where I anticipate using these languages, at least at the foundational level of hopefully continuing to travel throughout Europe and having an opportunity to practice them. So that's kind of where I'm at of just basic conversation. So if you have suggestions of what that would look like and where I should go with that, I'm really welcome to them because I don't always know what a basic conversation means. And then you also asked, have I begun to think about the interview project and the final project? And I was wondering if, and again, it's totally up to you with having your permission, but I was wondering if I could kind of combine them because I mentioned this class and this goal to my grandmother, and she lives in New Orleans. She's from Honduras, grew up in Panama and Honduras. She moved like halfway through, and then settled in Costa Rica for a brief time before moving to New Orleans like a while ago. And she can speak Spanish fluently, but she can't read or write it because her dad did not want to pay for her to continue schooling past 6th grade. I guess in that time and in that culture, it it didn't seem valuable to him to educate a woman that far. So her brothers were able to go on through high school and get their high school diplomas, but he didn't want to pay for her to have a formal education, so she can't read or write in Spanish. And I find that so devastating as someone who really truly values education that my grandmother can't read or write in her native language. She has gone on to be able to read and write in English, but not in Spanish. And so I was wondering, is the interview project of being able to interview my grandmother and ask her questions about growing up in Honduras and Panama. And initially, I'd probably memorize some of the basic questions to make sure I'm pronouncing everything correctly and I'm obtaining the answers that I want. And then asking follow-up questions based on her answers, and that would be on the fly, so we would see how that goes. But and I would want to record it as well, so I could go back later and listen and kind of ask her, what was that you said? Because then for the final project piece, the writing portion, I believe you had mentioned writing an article of some sort and having it be anywhere from a paragraph to a few paragraphs And I was thinking how special it would be to be able to write a paragraph about my grandmother in Spanish, um, because she can't read or write in Spanish, and that makes me very sad. So I would like to be able to do that for her and kind of tell her story in her native language in a way that she wouldn't be able to do otherwise. But it would require waiting until I interview her to be able to do that. Now, I'm going to New Orleans to visit both my sister and my grandmother during the last week of this course. It's the last week of April, and I could complete both projects during that time, or I could call my grandmother ahead of time, do the interview, record it maybe like on my phone or something, and then do the write up as the final project and do the interview earlier. I don't know if you have a preference on which way. If I get any say in the matter, I would love to have a little bit more time practicing all these languages and then spending that last week totally immersing myself. And it'd be quite easy to do that because I'll be with my grandmother and that's our vacation week from work. So I wouldn't have to worry about like real adulting stuff too, of having to work and everything. So that's what I would like to do if you're okay with that. And then the third question you had asked was if I've noticed any differences or similarities in the sentence structures of these languages. And at this point, I'm just comparing each to English, which again kind of goes with that hierarchical model that those two authors were explaining in their article that we read this week. So that's kind of what I'm doing is I'm comparing all these languages to English, and then hopefully as I gain fluency, I will then eventually be able to just kind of go based on the context of the word. So anyway, Dutch is incredibly similar to English in sentence structure and the fact that it's subject, verb, object. There are a few variations between the two languages. I think the biggest one that I found, well, the biggest two that I found confusing, the first one is that the Dutch does not use the auxiliary verb do. So instead of where do you come from, it's just where you come from is the way that it would be translated in English. And so it's hard for me to step outside of my native language and ask a question without the verb do, without the auxiliary verb in there. And then there's no progressive form in Dutch. So instead of I was bathing when he called or I was having a bath, it's I had a bath when he called. So not having that present progressive form is kind of weird. Um, as far as German goes, it's also fairly similar to English, except for a few variations where German uses the present perfect to talk about past events. So then I have drunk a glass of water instead of then I drank a glass of water. Um, and then it also doesn't have a progressive tense. So in the same sense as Dutch, where I eat my dinner versus I am eating my dinner. So some of the questions that I'm learning are the statements that just not having that variety, that variation has been kind of confusing to me of I eat my dinner versus I'm eating my dinner. It's just a little unusual as a native English speaker. And then for French, it's the most common grammatically English of the three. In the sense that it has auxiliary verbs, participles, and past, present, and future tenses, and it does have a present progressive form. I think the most confusing part that I've discovered so far, and again, I'm just totally at a novice level, French does not use the auxiliary form of do. So when I'm learning questions and how to ask questions, it's kind of confusing because they either make a statement but have a question inflection with it. So he is strong is a statement, it's a fact. But by putting a question mark and asking it as a question, it's a question in French and it's translated as such, but in English you need the auxiliary verb do. So he is strong, um, is asking a question, and then how often see you him and kind of switching the order of words to make up for the lack of do. So that's kind of what I've learned. And if you have any other suggestions, I'd really appreciate them. And if you'd like me to record a video of some of these words that I was reviewing and refreshing my memory on, let me know. Anyway, have a good night, Dr. Nee. Thanks so much for listening.